Welcome back to WD.
FM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. We're your hosts, Brie Bertolucci, Marketing Manager.
And Chris Smullen, Marketing and Editorial Specialist at the Walt Disney Family Museum.
Ooh, new fancy title, Chris. Congratulations.
Thank you. It sounds right, although I feel like I'm going to be slipping into several old titles but by the end of our recordings.
Yeah. Well, happy September. This month, there's not a ton of kind of celebrations happening. We are gearing up for the big 100th anniversary. So this month is a little quieter. So I thought, kind of in celebration of some kind of like smaller things, I thought it was fun to honor Elephant Appreciation Day, which takes place on September 22nd. So in celebration of that, I thought it might be fun place to start this podcast. And there's a fair amount elephant characters in the Disney universe. So, Chris, who's your favorite?
Well, I think picking Dumbo would be low-hanging peanuts. So I'm going to say, who's your friend who likes to play, and pick Bing Bong from the Academy Award-winning Inside Out.
That's a great character. I love Bing Bong. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't remember Bing Bong being in a lot of the marketing of the film. And because of that, I don't think any of us were really ready for how quite hard-hitting his defining moment in the film is.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. I just, I don't want to spoil it, although the movie has been out for 8 years now. So if you haven't seen it by now, definitely do. Richard Kind's vocal performance is incredible. And, now, of course, beyond the film, we could see Bing Bong at his very own merchandise and confectionery shop at Disney's California Adventure on Pixar's Pier. Bing Bong's Sweet Stuff. Inside Out is also a really personal film for me in many ways. I took kind of the reverse Riley trip, moving from the San Francisco Bay Area to Orlando for my first Disney college program just a couple months before the movie came out, a journey that produced many core memories for me. And of course, we can't talk about that film without mentioning the connection the museum has to the development of that film and its many Easter eggs. A couple of those, the main character's name, Riley, was inspired by the street address of our special exhibition hall. Her instant messenger screen name, Riley 122, is also a nod to that. There's also a great shot of the hockey rink that Riley goes to in San Francisco with the Golden Gate Bridge behind it, and you might have guessed it, that's supposed to be the location of the museum.
That's a great pick, Chris. For the same reasons, I just love Inside Out so much. And I was an intern at the time at the museum, just getting ready to go to my college program. But there's a great dedication at the end of the film to Ron and Diane Disney Miller. And I just remember thinking, these people love the museum as much as I do. And so that's what has always endeared me to Inside Out, that the creators have always championed the museum, Pete Docter, Ronnie Del Carmen, and Jonas Rivera, who used one of our conference rooms to kind of hash out some of those early story concepts and story development. So, and Bing Bong is just amazing. Take her to the moon for me. That line still makes me emotional. And I just also love that he's part cat, part elephant, and who could forget, part dolphin. So just such a fun character all around.
All great animals.
Yes.
All in one.
All the perfect animals. Well, for my pick, I went back and forth with so many characters, but I had to stay true to my inner child. And I'm going with the Heffalump from Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day. This film premiered in 1968 and was the last Academy Award Walt Disney received for Best Animated Short Film. In 1968, he was given the award posthumously. So Heffalumps and Woozles is just a fun song and a fun sequence in that film. And I just love the doll-like quality these animals have in that sequence, that it ties together Winnie the Pooh and his friends with how these animals were Christopher Robin's stuffed animals and they were his toys. And so the Heffalumps and Woozles in their movements and appearances really reflect that kind of playfulness of these stuffed animal toys while tormenting Pooh Bear in his dreams.
That's a great pick. And just whenever I go to Disneyland, the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is typically a short wait and some nice air conditioning relief from the sun. And I will be humming Heffalumps and Woozles just for the rest of the day. Also just seeing Pooh like drift off into this land is it just makes me laugh every time, seeing his little like astral body just float away.
I love Winnie the Pooh. It was my favorite movie to watch probably tore apart that VCR of the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh just by rewinding it all the time. So special place in my heart.
Absolutely. Well, now it's time for some museum updates. Summer Mondays have come to an end. The Walt Disney Family Museum is now open Thursday through Sunday, with the main museum galleries open from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., with last entry at 4:30. On operating days, our special exhibition Disney Cats and Dogs will be open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., with last entry at 4 p.m.
In conjunction with our latest special exhibition, Disney Cats and Dogs, and the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company, our studio programs are featuring some of our favorite animated feline and canine friends. So join us for our studio series workshop, 90-minute sessions that explore animation principles and techniques. Adult and youth sessions are available for each workshop, and a selection of the workshops are also offered virtually. Available topics right now are animate a dog digging and animate a dog on the scent. So visit our website to sign up.
Yes, and our studio series programs are always very popular. It seems like our members and subscribers are themselves dogs on the scent. As soon as we drop them, they get snapped up right away. So definitely recommend joining if you're curious about being able to draw one of these subjects. Join us in celebrating our latest special exhibition, Disney Cats and Dogs, with a month-long screening of The Fox and the Hound, a story about facing challenges and overcoming differences in the name of friendship. Screenings are on Saturdays and Sundays from September 2nd through the 24th. Film screenings are subject to change, so visit our calendar for more information.
Fox and the Hound is devastating. I I don't know if I'll be in attendance to that one, but it's always a fun time.
The people aren't supposed to know that it's devastating before they see it. That's why we just talk about you face challenges and overcome differences for friendship and let them see what happens after that. Very, very happy, friendly, not sad at all. Fox and the Hound. Come see it.
It's just about a fox and a hound and the friendship that pursues. Yes, yes. Okay, no spoilers. Well, on Saturday, September 16th, we're hosting a special members only program, 100 Years of Disney Animation, with Disney legend Andreas Deja. Join animator and Disney legend Andreas Deja as he shares his contributions to the exciting new book, Drawing 100 Years of Disney Wonder, published by Walter Foster Publishing. Released in honor of the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company, this book presents a retrospective of iconic Disney characters and features step-by-step drawing guides and vintage artwork paired with historical context and fascinating facts.
That is going to be such a good program. Can't wait. Well, and if you can't wait and want to hear about such programs earlier than anyone else, join as a member today. When you join as a member, you'll get access to tickets to this program and many other member-exclusive events and benefits. So visit our website at waltdisney.org/membership to learn more.
Now, don't miss out on our two current exhibitions on view, Pencils and Passion, a student art exhibition, which is free to view in our lower lobby gallery, open now through October 1st, 2023. Only 1 month left. Disney Cats and Dogs has been extended.
Yay!
So you can now see this exhibition on display in our Diane Disney Miller Exhibition Hall through June 2nd, 2024. So plenty of time to come visit us to see Disney Cats and Dogs.
Yes, if you were having trouble making it by January 14th, which is fair because that is my birthday, as I will continue to bring up every time I can, you have a little bit longer to see Disney Cats and Dogs. So make sure you come out and see it. And now it's time for our Collections Clash. Last month, we were inspired by Walt's love of animals, and last month's topic was objects featuring an animal in our galleries, but specifically animals that were not cats or dogs. First round was between my pick of Pepe del Presidio, our audio animatronic tiki bird, which received 68% of the votes, and Bree's pick of Mel Shaw's Bambi pastel artwork that received 32% of the votes.
The second round was between my pick of the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit poster that received 74% of the votes and Chris's pick of the mechanical wind-up toys, which received 26% of the votes.
And for the last round, it was between my pick of the Mr. Toad maquettes, which received 71% of the votes, and Bree's pick of the Three Little Pigs wind-up toys that received 29% of the votes. What can I say, Bree? The people love their Toad.
I am so mistaken. I only thought there were a couple of you. Turns out, according to our votes, it is the winner, 71%. That's a good margin. So
And Mr. Toad fans travel well in a motor car.
Yes. On their wild ride. Well, congrats, Chris, on your win. And this month, we are celebrating the making of Disney films by selecting different cameras in our galleries. So, walking through the galleries, you can see the evolution of filmmaking through the technology of the cameras used during Walt's lifetime. So, let's get into it. Chris, since you won, you get to go first.
Well, when you talk about cameras in the galleries, in my view, the conversation must start with the multiplane camera.
Of course. That's the behemoth of the camera that takes over almost 2 full floors. It's huge.
2 floors, 1 camera. Our multiplane camera, one of 3 multiplane cameras left in the world, can be seen on the first floor in the museum store and the second floor in Gallery 5. The camera, which netted the studios a Technical Academy Award, revolutionized animation by achieving the illusion of depth. In addition to being used immediately on the Silly Symphonies, it perhaps was pushed to its greatest limits in feature animated movies such as Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi. Beyond the dazzling effects it was capable of reproducing, the multiplane camera represented an incredibly experimental and confident Disney Studios of the late 1930s and early 1940s that was unrivaled in the industry and created masterpieces that are just as fresh 80 years later. My favorite fact about the multiplane is that it was first used on the Old Mill in 1937 and last used on The Little Mermaid in 1989, after which Disney films became produced exclusively digitally. All of this to say, the multiplane camera was the state of the art of animation for over 50 years.
Yeah, the multiplane camera is such an incredible feat in filmmaking. And the fact that there's only 3 left in the world, one at our museum, one at Disneyland Paris, their Hollywood Studios park, and then the next one is at the Walt Disney Studios. So unfortunately, the public is not available to see that third one. So I've only seen 2 out of the 3. I was at Disneyland Paris, and their area, the Art of Animation building, was closed when I went there. And I was like, that's the only reason why I want to go to the second park is to see the multiplane camera. And if I can't see it, I don't even want to bother.
Well, there's a reason to come back. Plus, they're opening a bunch of new stuff too. So I think all the more reason to come back.
Oh, of course. That's on my bucket list is to see all 3 multiplane cameras. So the multiplane camera, I just love so much. There's a lot of just fun fun facts about it. I know we've covered it in previous podcasts, but I just love how the number on our camera is multiplane camera number 12, I believe, and that was the same camera that you can see in the Reluctant Dragon. Now, I will never say that that's the same exact one, but there was only 3, so there's 11, 12, and 14.
Yeah, but, camera number 14 knows what number it really is.
Exactly. Well, great first pick, Chris. I am very jealous. That would have definitely, the person who gets to go first is, of course, going to snap up the multiplane camera. It's hard to compete with. So I'm taking more of a personal route with my first pick. I'm going with Walt's personal camera, the Kodak Instamatic 804. Now, this camera was produced in 1965, and Walt bought it around the time of its release. So Walt brought his Kodak Instamatic camera with him on many of his final family trips, including his trips with his grandkids to San Diego and the whole big Disney family trip to Vancouver in 1966. Of the many cameras featured on display in the museum, a unique feature of a lot of them is that there's a handful of them that are on permanent loan. So the multiplane camera is on permanent loan from the Walt Disney Company, and this camera is on permanent loan from Walt Disney's eldest granddaughter, Joanna Miller. Now, this camera was an update to the Instamatic 800. This became Kodak's top model for the line of 126 film cartridge models, and this model adopted the then new flash cubes. So they rotated as the film would rotate, and that would bring the next unused bulb to the front. Don't ask me any follow-up questions, Chris. That's as much as I know about that.
We're going to get very technical in this collections clash, so it goes both ways.
Yeah, this is as much as I know about the cameras on display. We would have to call in an expert. We didn't have time for that this episode. But, what's interesting, this, of course, is something we bring up often on this podcast. And I think this round kind of perfectly exemplifies this point, is that it's so interesting to see kind of the cutting edge, camera technology that was developed at the Disney studios, like the multiplane camera. And then we have the very personal side of the Walt Disney Family Museum. What did the man Walt Disney use to document his family life? And it's no surprise that it was this newest Kodak model, the Instamatic 804. So a great dichotomy of picks here.
Great pick. And since this is the snake style draft, you get the next pick.
All right. For my second pick, I'm taking it underwater with the Mitchell CinemaScope underwater camera that was developed for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Ugh, that hurts. I was going to get that one for sure.
I know. I'm sorry. I had to steal it from you. You took the multiplane camera. I'm taking the 20,000 Leagues camera.
That's fair. That's fair. Tell us about it.
So this particular camera that's on display in our galleries, the camera housing that was used for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was actually refurbished for museum display by Don Iwerks, son of Ub Iwerks. Now, Don first started as a camera technician on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So this camera is on loan from the Walt Disney Company to be used for educational purposes about the making of the film 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So I think that's pretty cool. The camera was operated by underwater photographer Till Gabani. Now, Gabani wrote for the American Cinematographer in 1954, quote, 30 feet underwater in the Caribbean, off Nassau, Bahamas, some 80 motion picture artists and technicians wearing safety diving gear recently completed what unquestionably was the most challenging assignment ever faced by a Hollywood motion picture troupe. Here on the ocean floor was filmed in Eastman color with a CinemaScope lens the fabulous underwater sequences for Walt Disney's version of Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, end quote. Now, when filming, there were more people working underwater at one time than any other previous attempts at underwater film productions at the time. So for the undersea burial of the slain shipmate, Gabani reported that there was a total of 42 people working simultaneously in front and behind the camera. The Mitchell camera was used for stationary shots underwater, utilizing a heavy metal tripod, and were assisted by camera assistants, prop men, and grips underwater. Now, just kind of a fun fact, studio lights were the only thing that was missing from these underwater scenes, and the crew utilized natural sunlight to light their scenes.
That is a fun fact. Well, got a whale of a tale to tell you. That would have been my next pick. But my next pick is technically 11 cameras. Ready for this? The Circorama camera rig suspended from the ceiling in Gallery 9. During the planning of Disneyland, Walt asked Ub Iwerks if he could build a camera that could photograph a full circle, creating a film that would surround the audience. Ub's solution was a system consisting of 11 16mm Kodak Cinespecial cameras mounted on a common circular base plate with lenses radiating outward like spokes in a wheel. The system was named Circorama. The Circorama Theater became a popular Disneyland attraction with the film A Tour of the West. The theater comprised 11 semicircular screens arranged in a circle surrounding the audience. Small gaps between the screens allowed the projectors, located behind the screens, to project across the theater to screens on the opposite side, creating a continuous 360-degree movie. Further developments followed: a new Circorama film, America the Beautiful, in the late 1950s, and later an improved 35mm camera and projection system renamed CircleVision. With this technology, we not only had the Circorama CircleVision 360 attractions at Disneyland's Tomorrowland until the late 1980s, but we also had similar attractions at various World Fairs and Expos, Magic Kingdom at Epcot at Walt Disney World, and Tokyo Disneyland at Tokyo Disney Resort. Later versions of this technology used 9 16mm cameras whose prints could be blown up to 35mm size. Personally, Brie, there are a few things better than popping into the China Pavilion, also getting out of the sun. That seems to be a theme of this episode, and just being completely surrounded by the great wonders of that country. And France had their version, Canada as well, though the Canada one did get replaced by a new version somewhat recently. And they're just all great applications of this technology and great ways that we can still enjoy the fruits of the labor of course, Walt Disney in conception, but Ub Iwerks creating one of many things, all of the things really that Walt needed to entertain people. So that's my pick, Circorama camera rig.
That's such a great pick. And I think today we definitely take for granted just the idea of 360 photos and 360 films. And just knowing that, like, today it's an itty bitty little camera that you could stick up in the air and get a whole 360 camera shot or camera video of your room that you're in. But that had to come from somewhere, and that technology started way back with kind of the Circorama camera set and just kind of the development of that. It's just so fascinating.
Well, and the multiplane camera, even though didn't design Disney's multiplane camera that was developed by Bill Garrity, Iwerks did create his very own multiplane camera when he had his own studio. So really, 3 of our 4 picks so far have been or adjacent. So there's so much that we can say about Iwerks and his contributions to not only animation but camera technology.
And just a quick fun fact, I do see people make these comments on the internet a lot, and I have to stop myself from saying, well, actually, uh, but yeah, you're right. Did create his own version of the multiplane camera, and Bill Garrity's is the one that we see. It's vertical, and UB's was horizontal. So it's just kind of a difference of approach, and obviously the one that they used for 50 years is the vertical one. So that's how you can tell apart the 2 different versions. And UB's version is that one. That'll be a fun little trivia question for people to have. So you have the next pick. Chris, what's your last pick?
Well, when you talk about camera technology in general in the galleries, of course, the multiplane camera comes to mind. And then next, personally, is the optical printer. But alas, the optical printer itself is not a camera. So I'm going to use the camera that took the footage that was later put into the optical printer, Technicolor camera DF7.
That is a really fun pick. And I like the combination of, I feel like this is a sneaky way to sneak in the optical printer. So congrats, Chris.
Thank you. Well, and it just completely changes the way that you view the films of that time. Even from the 40s, but like especially the 50s and 60s with the matte paintings, the Ellen Shop matte paintings, the imposing of animated figures in a live action space, and like Mary Poppins, the forced perspective effects in like a Darby O'Gill and the Little People. All of that comes from obviously advancing camera technology, but then also compositing the film. So basically, to take a step back, in the early years of the film industry, the combining of images, such as live actors with animated backgrounds or characters, was accomplished by exposing film of a foreground image while keeping the film in physical contact with a holdback mask film as both films ran through the camera. The mask, in effect, screened off the background from the camera's eye. After the camera had made the first exposure, the film was rewound and a second exposure made of the background, this time using a holdback mask to hide the foreground. Often, shrinkage of one of the mask films would produce unwanted matte lines around the actors. The Technicolor camera DF7 was utilized in the filming of scenes in which actors photographed on the stage would be later combined with alternate backgrounds or animated characters, such as the aforementioned Darby O'Gill and the Little People, Mary Poppins, and then also Parent Trap, having 2 Hayley Mills on screen at the same time. The combining of images from 2 separate films was produced in an optical printer, just like optical printer number 2 we have on display. In order to prevent double exposed ghost images, the printer was used to generate a high contrast matte image of the foreground actors. This matte was used first to isolate the actors against a neutral background, and then second to produce the new background with empty spaces for the actors. The 2 images were then combined in the printer. Technicolor camera, modified with a unique prism to isolate the sodium illuminated background, no, I will not be elaborating, simplified this process by photographing 2 films simultaneously: the color negative film of the actors and a black and white matte film that recorded the actors as clear silhouettes. The rest of the combination work was done in the usual way. The usual way, this comes from the label that we have of the camera, so the usual way is for someone who is more versed in cameras to be able to explain if you don't understand already.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to have you explain that, Chris. What is...
It's the usual way, Bree. You know it, I know it, the American people know it. It's the usual way. We're just going to leave it at that.
Well, that was such a great pick, Chris. I that is one camera in our galleries I think I know the least about, and I seem to just move right past it into that personal section of the gallery because that is where Walt's Ballet boxes, so many great photographs are. And so this was so illuminating. I actually didn't really know that much about this camera.
Well, next time you're up here, just go into the galleries and sit right in front of the printer and let the dulcet tones of Dick Van Dyke explain to you over and over how the optical printer works.
I love that.
Well, what's your last pick then, Bree?
For my last pick, I'm going all the way back in time, and I'm picking the Bell and Howell camera. Early Alice comedy shorts were primarily filmed with the Pathé camera, and with the success of the Alice comedies, the Disney brothers would rent the Bell and Howell camera to film the live action scenes, later acquiring their own camera. Now, the Pathé camera was relegated to filming the animation for the series. So one was used for animation and the one was used for live action. And we actually have them displayed together in our second gallery when Walt comes to Hollywood. So that's where you can see this Bell and Howell camera. The Bell and Howell Model 2709 standard cinemachinery was a hand crank camera produced from 1912 through 1958. This camera had a reputation of precision, durability, and reliability that made it a favorite of Charlie Chaplin, one of Walt's favorite silent film actors. This 2709 dominated the market that was long held by Pathé Studios by 1919. 100% of the equipment used to make movies in Hollywood was manufactured by Bell and Howell. The 2709 model was used to film silent classics like Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, and Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush. Another reason I had to make this pick is that this camera in our galleries was used as inspiration for the new Lego set, which features a camera with the first ever minifigure of Walt Disney. This set also includes a small replica of the little multi-plane camera. I do have the set, and I'm very excited to put it together.
And if anybody's wondering, wow, there are pictures of this in the Walt Disney Family Museum galleries. I wonder what very steady hand took those pictures. That was me.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for doing that. It's a very cool that it was inspired by the camera in our galleries. This Bell and Howell camera is not the only Bell and Howell camera we have in our galleries. The other one is Walt Disney's personal movie camera, the Bell and Howell 200 Electric Eye 16 millimeter movie camera. This camera was originally produced in 1957 and sold for $299.95.
A bargain.
This was such a bargain. And Walt actually used this 200 EE movie camera to document his travels with his family. And you can actually see a photo of Walt holding this camera while on his final trip with his family to Vancouver in our gallery. So I love when you can see a photo of Walt actually utilizing some of these personal objects that we have.
Totally, and you got two cameras for the price of one in that last pick. So well,
exactly.
done.
But you did have 11.
I had 11 at once.
Yeah.
So I can't really complain. Well, that was a great pick. And now it is time for our honorable mentions. Since there aren't a ton more cameras in our galleries, we figured for our honorable mentions this month, we would feature our favorite photos in the galleries, presumably taken by a camera. So it's all related. For my first pick, I'm going with my personal favorite image in the galleries. Full stop. Picture of artist Salvador Dali riding the Lily Bell train.
Well, and you can't forget who is the engineer.
It's Ward Kimball.
Yes, exactly, which makes it a very kind of interesting photo that, on Walt's miniature train, the Lily Bell, that a guest star appeared as the conductor, Ward Kimball.
And also, it's kind of fitting because some of Ward's work, especially on his own, was or could have been a little bit more abstract in nature. So I like to think that the surrealist in Salvador Dali was perfectly met by Ward Kimball conducting the train.
It is a very fun photo. I do really enjoy that one. I'm actually really surprised, Chris, that you went with this photo because I was really expecting you to take this pick. So I'm going to take it. For my first honorable mention, I'm going with the photo of Walt holding his skis next to his Attenhofer downhill skis. You're the Walt ski guy.
Justice for Walt skis. Oh, man, I fumbled the bag on that. I mean, I had to go with Dali riding the train.
Yes.
It's just such a sharp image in my mind, and it's my favorite photo. But yes, any other time I would have been all over the skis. So great.
Yeah.
Please tell us about it.
Well, this photo comes from the pages of Walt's photo album that featured many photos of this trip at Sugar Bowl Resort in Northern California circa 1946. Now, in the late 1930s, Walt Disney met Austrian Olympic skiing champion Hannes Schroll. Now, Schroll purchased the land to develop Sugar Bowl Resort. He later would ask Walt for financial assistance to build the resort. Walt wrote a check for $2,500 and became one of the initial stockholders of the newly christened Sugar Bowl Resort. To honor Walt's support and partnership, Scholl changed the name of Hemlock Peak to Mount Disney. You can still ski down Mount Disney today. Also, fun fact, Hannes Schroll was an accomplished yodeler, and Walt actually recruited him to provide what is now Goofy's famous yell.
Incredible. We just had Bill Farmer too at the museum. Should have asked him what he thought about the development of Goofy's yell.
I feel like I've heard him speak about this before because I know that for many, many years, they used Hannes Schroll's yodel, his yell that he provided for Goofy for like decades, because the voice of Goofy at the time, Pinto Colvig, couldn't produce that yell. So it couldn't be reproduced. So I'd be interested. I feel like I've heard Bill Farmer talk about it before, but now it is totally escaping me about this famous Goofy yell.
Well, we'll have to have him back so that he could discuss it. Oh, darn. Yet another program with the delightful Bill Farmer. What are we going to do? Well, my next honorable mention is the photo of Walt waving goodbye near the end of the galleries.
Chris, you're always picking the tearjerker picks.
I know, but it's what people want, and now it's what the people expect of me. This still is actually not a pure photograph, but it's a screen grab of home movies shot by Walt's son-in-law, former museum president of the board, Ron Miller, on one of Walt's last family vacations. It's the emotional gut punch at the end of seeing all the progress Walt made in filmmaking, theme parks, and then city planning at the end, in a bright and colorful gallery before we reach the stark beige room which covers Walt's untimely and shocking passing. Its abruptness, yet gentle, reassuring energy is the point.
Yeah, I really love this because if you saw this photo of Walt waving anywhere else in the galleries, it wouldn't have that same emotional impact that it does in that specific spot. You read that last wall of all the things Walt was in the progress of working on. You see the progress for Epcot, Mineral King, Cal Arts, and just all the films that were in production at the time, like The Jungle Book. And, to see that friendly face just waving goodbye as when you're entering that final room and the inevitable is happening, is just so heart-wrenching. And I know we always get comments of people saying that they needed tissues on their way out. It's just that kind of the way that presenting that specific photo in our galleries is really beautiful.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I love so much about the design of the museum, where Gallery 9, Diane described turning the corner from Gallery 8 into Gallery 9 as being like Christmas morning. And it really is. There's so many colors, there's sounds, there's screens, projections, there's, of course, the Disneyland model, there's the wall of televisions. And it's just this like hectic, frenetic pace of all of these things that Walt Disney's doing in, the last roughly 15, 16 years of his life. And to go from all of that, all of this activity, all of these sounds and sights, and then you pass Walt waving that still, and you go into this room where it is simply just the TV that is playing the newsreel announcing Walt's passing. And then on the back wall there, you have the telegrams of condolences and the editorial cartoons. There really is no starker contrast in the galleries. And, I could only imagine being at Disneyland or being at the studios that day when the announcement was made that Walt had passed, and feeling that same sharp change in spirit, in the feeling around everybody. So I feel like the museum uniquely captures that moment really well, and so that's why I felt like that was definitely going to be my highest, or one of my highest honorable mentions.
So touching. It made me a little emotional there thinking about actually what that TV screen really represents to so many people, is that is how the public learned of his death, and that like people all around the world would have learned about it, and who didn't know him personally but felt so personally like invested in who this person was. And so just another thing I love about our wonderful museum. Well, on a higher note, on a hopefully more uplifting note, my next honorable mention, I'm going with the photo booth strips of Walt and Lillian that can be found towards the end of our galleries, right before you see Chris's pick, showcasing Walt's final year. Now, these adorable photos that showcase the playfulness of Walt and Lillian's relationship are located next to his valet box. And Diane Disney Miller shared the following story about how she received these photo booth strips. Quote, Mother and Dad were somewhere, I forget. I think it might have been New Orleans. I received a long hotel envelope in the mail from them with no note, just these photo booth shots, which I love. End quote. I just love how they took them. They were like, gotta send these to Diane.
That's so cute. And I love that there was no note either, because some pictures really do tell 1,000 words. And on that same note, my last honorable mention is more in line with my first, a picture that tells 1,000 words. And it's the photo of Walt and Leopold Stokowski seemingly playing a game of tug of war on a pad on the floor in what I presume is production on Fantasia. The chaotic energy in this photo is great, and it's just another way that we can showcase Walt in a different way at the Walt Disney Family Museum.
If there was a stereotype for what I thought conductors looked like, Leopold Stokowski would be it. So this is such a fun photo. So for my last honorable mention, I'm going with photos taken by my first round pick, bringing it all full circle, Walt's Kodak Instamatic 804. So from the summer of 1965, Walt took a trip with his wife Lillian, and they took 4 of their grandchildren to San Diego. According to Diane, quote, Dad decided that he wanted to see SeaWorld and Vacation Village in San Diego to get ideas for the new Florida Disneyland that they were planning, end quote. Now, we have on view a selection of these photos, and these were actually taken by a Kodak Instamatic camera. And so you can see in these group of photos, everyone's matching in blue and white seersucker outfits, which I think is so cute. And he has 4 of his grandkids with him, and they're smiling. And in most of these photos, Walt is not present, and that is because Walt is behind the camera, except for one of these photos. So I really, really love this photo. It's one of Walt kneeling on the grass, holding a sandwich in his hand. And this photo was actually taken by Walt's grandson, Walter Miller. Walter is the museum's co-founder and president of the board. He recalled, quote, I'm reminded when I look at the photograph, the only photograph I ever took of my grandpa. He knew where the camera was with his experience in filmmaking, and it's a great shot. I love it, end quote. And I just always love seeing these personal moments that were captured on display. And this is one moment where to know a little bit more about the insight into this photo just kind of adds to the greatness of it. So I love learning like who was behind the camera, what was the situation. I just absolutely love that.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great place to end our Collections Clash. Visit our Instagram stories today to vote on your favorite objects, or email us at podcast@wdfmuseum.org to cast your votes.
Thanks for tuning in to WDFM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on all the social media platforms at WDF Museum for all the latest updates.
From both of us, say cheese and keep moving forward.
Bye.
Bye.